Today we're going to be talking about the probably most common modern plague of today's psychology, the idea of perfectionism. In the mind of a perfectionist, there's somebody who achieves things to a very high standard consistently and holds themselves to a high standard in general. In reality, perfectionism is an identity that people cling to that causes procrastination, pressure, self-loathing, and a whole lot of stress. I believe that perfectionism is a symptom of people-pleasing, that overall mental illness that so many of us are affected by, and it often leads to chronic anxiety and depression. People often take pride in being a perfectionist, the same way that people take pride in being really busy. But is being a perfectionist really all it's cracked up to be? Are these people really perfect with really high standards and really high achievements? Or is something darker going on? In my experience coaching people for many years, what I've found is what is represented as high standards are actually impossibly high standards. Goalposts that move with every achievement so that no matter how well you do, it's never good enough. Very few perfectionists actually deliver perfect results or are high achievers. Most are average at best, with burning themselves out, putting a lot of effort into things that don't really matter, and sacrificing the things that do. That's when they're not procrastinating. In my opinion, perfectionism comes from fear. Two specific types of fear that produce different types of behavior: the fear of failure and the fear of success. Perfectionists with a fear of failure tend to be high achievers. They're always running away from failure and from rejection by being very, very good at things. The problem is, while they do achieve highly, there's no satisfaction beyond a brief high before they're on to the next thing, because they always feel not good enough. They always feel like they need to be doing more. The satisfaction wears off really quickly, they often end up burnt out, and they don't even really get to enjoy things. The few that are pursuing something they're passionate about, and that's not many, tend to put so much pressure on themselves to do it well that they even lose their passion for it, and they don't enjoy what they're doing. The fear of success type of perfectionist, in my opinion, is far more common, though they don't identify as being afraid of success. They often think of themselves as afraid of failure. But these are the ones who don't start, they don't try, they procrastinate, they put things off, they get busy doing things that don't matter so they don't have to do the things that do matter. This inevitably leads to them not performing well enough to succeed, because they're actually afraid of that success. They're afraid of the change of doing well. If they would actually be perfect in the way they claim they're trying to be, their life would change so much that they couldn't handle it. Perfectionism, as an arm of people-pleasing, is harmful to your life. Even if you achieve highly, you don't get to enjoy it. And most of you aren't achieving highly. Let's talk about recovery from perfectionism. Because let's face it, it's not a great way to live. You might pride yourself on being a perfectionist, but ask yourself, has it brought a higher quality of life? Do you enjoy what you're doing? Do you regularly experience joy? Or are you under pressure, stress, all this other stuff to achieve all the time? And even when you do achieve, you're not good enough, you feel like you've got imposter syndrome, you never really get to win at all. Step 1 of recovering from perfectionism is to admit that you have a problem. To be proud of being a perfectionist is like a drug addict being proud of their addiction. It's unhealthy and harmful. The perfectionist identification is mental masturbation. You're patting yourself on the back for suffering. It's pointless, and it is not the best way for you to live. You've been trained to think that this is a good thing to be, and yet your experience tells you quite clearly it sucks to be a perfectionist. Step 2. Perfectionists often spread themselves thin. The cure to this is to do only what matters, to put all your energy into a few meaningful things rather than trying to do everything well. It means committing to the 80-20 Pareto principle. Only 20% of what you're doing is actually worth doing, so you're going to have to cut out like 80% of what you're doing. A more realistic goal is to look at your task list and try to cut it in half. Delegate, minimize, delete, whatever you have to do to focus only on the most meaningful things that you need to be doing and spend the rest of your time relaxing and recuperating. Go deep rather than wide. Step 3. Firstly, for the fear of failure types. Because you're never good enough, you need to actually implement a conscious good enough measurement. Whenever you do any task, before you start, you need to ask yourself, what would good enough be? And stop when you reach that mark. If trying to reach that mark was very hard and stressful for you, then you set it too high and you need to bring it down. Most of the tasks you overdo. You do them better than they need to be done. So bring it down to just the amount they need to be done and start challenging yourself to stop when you hit that mark. It's also worthwhile for you to admit your imposter syndrome to people. Whenever you feel like you're not as good as everyone thinks you are, let them know that. Start to make it normal to talk about this so you can relieve yourself of the shame of not being good enough. And lastly, make sure you quit anything that you don't enjoy. Most of the stuff you're doing is hard work because you put all this pressure on yourself. So quit and see if you genuinely want to come back to it later. If so, then do so in a low pressure way. Do it for fun rather than achievement. For the fear of success types, which is most of you, the key is to bring the thing down to its most minimal, manageable, bite-sized chunk. What perfectionists tend to do is they overwhelm themselves with the size of a task in their head, the perfect size, so that they never get started. They can't just go to the gym. They have to go to the gym and do this massive 1.5 hour workout and have to beat their personal best from yesterday, blah, blah, blah. It's enough to make you not want to go to the gym. The key is to bring it down to the smallest, most basic, muddy, dirty little task that you can handle. Go to the gym for 5 minutes. Drop and do 10 push-ups. Anything is better than nothing. If you've been thinking about doing something for more than 10 minutes, you're thinking too long. Do a tiny bit of it. Just get started. Forget perfect. Just do anything. Step 4 is understanding you are going to continually relapse. You've been conditioned and programmed into thinking that you need to do everything well. It's going to take you a long time to undo that conditioning. So you need to catch yourself every day. In fact, when you're first getting started, in everything that you do, pause for 5 or 10 seconds before you start and go, am I bringing perfectionism into this? What would good enough look like? What's the smallest amount? What would just enough to get by look like? How can I achieve that? And keep reminding yourself until you replace the old pattern with a healthier, more realistic one. And step 5 is about admitting this to people. Instead of taking pride in your perfectionism and bragging about being a perfectionist, tell people honestly that you use the perfectionist identity to procrastinate, to beat yourself up, to keep going with a self-loathing, not good enough story. Ask them to call you out on it. Ask them to catch you when you're doing your perfectionist stuff and to challenge you on it so that they can help you break out of this nasty, unhelpful psychological prison. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it and share it around. Comment below with your thoughts. And if you've found that people-pleasing and perfectionism just isn't working for you and you'd rather live with integrity and love yourself instead, please get in touch and I'll either put you onto some more resources or we can talk about intensive one-to-one coaching. Thanks again. I'll see you all next time.